Well, I think we were all so thrilled with the way that the first film, enchanted audiences around the world that not to come back would have been quite churlish. So it's lovely to be in the company of the bear again. Mr. Brown, of course, ended up in the last film having found his mojo again, and not being quite as straitjacketed and boring as his life had been since he's had children. He'd been very protective of them, and part of Paddington's influence on the family was to release Mr. Brown from his rather staid, protective ways. We find him in the midst of a midlife crisis. He gets passed over for promotion, starts dyeing his hair, and wants to buy a fast car, all those usual things of and try and get fit. So he takes up a new discipline called chakrobatics, which is a sort of a fusion of Eastern traditions and bodybuilding. Paddington is always the most stable character in the film, really, because he never changes insofar as if ever mishap befalls him, he doesn't necessarily learn from it, but he just resets to positive all the time, and everything is going to be all right. So when he sets his heart on getting a present for Aunt Lucy, and he needs to earn some pennies to get enough money to buy it, he sets out to do lots of odd jobs around the area, and of course this brings him into contact with all sorts of people who live in this very, as you say, multicultural community around Windsor Gardens, and it's delightful. You've got everything from everyone from the local doctor to the newsagent who has a parrot on her shoulder all the time, the bereaved colonel, or the rather sort of misanthropic colonel who has forgotten his sort of self-respect and dignity and doesn't really shave and shuffles around in his dressing gown, and there's the young law student who Paddington hitches a ride with every morning on the back of her bike, and all these characters in the community that Paddington touches upon or comes into contact with. So what is it to be British? I think it's to be quirky and tolerant, and full of contradiction. And the first film was, to an extent, a love letter to London. Let's face it, it was full of all those glorious chocolate box images that overseas people, when they come to visit, want to go and tick the boxes of. And this film underlines that with even greater definition, because part of the plot involves going to some of the iconic landmarks around London. And it absolutely draws on all the great strengths of British culture and all the quirks and quiddities of it all. Paul's contribution can't be praised highly enough, because it really is the fruition of what he's been thinking about and what takes place in his imagination. He goes into this strange sort of hard stare place, Paul. You can tell, I think he's exactly like Paddington, where he's worrying away in his head about why he's not serving this scene properly. And then he'll come up with a new way of doing things, or revisit a scene a few days later, and he'll say there's a bit there that isn't right. And it's not a way I don't have that imagination that he has, and I admire it hugely, because it is always striving to be better and more cinematic and more entertaining, and he never loses his sense of fun in it all. And I think, as I say, that is complemented by Lindy Hemming's touch with the colours of the costumes and the type of costumes, and the progression of costumes as the mood changes through the film. I remember in the first film when I started off literally wearing grey suits because Mr. Brown was so grey and dull, and he ended up in sort of fiery red as he was climbing around the top of the Natural History Museum. So we've got similar sort of patterns through this film. And Gary Williamson's extraordinary and beautiful designs. I love one of my favourites was in the first film, The Geographer's Guild, which was a stunning enough building in itself. But then when you see all the added touches, these strange pipes and sort of almost steampunk type inventions that he'd added to it, gave it a wonderful classic, yet you could believe it still existed in the contemporary world. So Paul, I think, always starts from a sense that we must feel that there is a reality here, but wouldn't it be great to go into nudge that world, and things like that beautiful stairwell in the house. The number of people who said, "I want to live in that house," and that's a great tribute to Gary and Paul.
Hey, so I hope you liked the video. Now stay with me as I have an interesting behind-the-scenes movie fact from Harry Potter. and the Chamber of Secrets. Now Bella, the Neapolitan Mastiff that played Fang, got very protective of Daniel Radcliffe and would jump in front of him to defend him whenever the animatronic spider from Aragog would come out. This resulted in having to refilm the scene multiple times. Are you a Harry Potter fan? What's your favourite movie? Let me know below. Now also, if you haven't already done it, subscribe and click the notification bell to receive the latest trailers and other cool videos the moment they're online. And I'll see you next time. Bye.